Hey guys, Mr. Enyart here. This is my angry face. I guess I'm just curious with the beard. But today I want to talk with you about absolute value. Absolute value is a very simple concept, and the real thing I want you to take from this lesson is that math is a language. Okay, math is a language, and in order to understand it as a language, we have to think of it in common sense, in the kind of language we use every day. So with math being a language, I want to take you through a situation I went through that helps me better understand absolute value. So this is me in my awesome scuba gear. Notice the boats in the background, see several other boats docked together, and we are in the Gulf of Mexico out on a vacation. My wife and I, for our 10-year anniversary, went to Mexico, and we got to drive these cool speedboats. They're like personal speedboats, and we had to go from a specific dock and drive 20 minutes on these boats out to this area where we could dock boats in the open water and then go snorkeling. And of course, here's my beautiful wife, Bethany, and myself. And again, we're getting ready to get off the boat and go snorkeling. So as I'm out driving, thinking about going from the hotel to the dock where they had all the boats and then taking the boat and driving it out here to the open water, I thought about all the directions I was going, the distance I was traveling, how long I had been there, and where my starting point was, and then what it meant once we got there. Because once we got there, we got to go snorkeling, as you saw earlier here. And when we went snorkeling, we had a rule. And the rule was simple. Stay within a certain distance of the boats, and whatever direction you go, make sure you make it back by a certain time. So how does that have to do with absolute value? So here's where we docked, okay? This is the open water, and the only rule is we have to be back by a certain amount of time, but we can go any direction we want. We can go right, we can go left, we can go down under the water, we can stay along the surface, we could even stay up in the boat if we wanted to. But what mattered is that this was our starting point. This was the dock. So I can think of my starting point as 0. 0 is where I'm starting. And no matter what direction I go, whether I go left, if I go right, if I go down, I can go diagonal, I can go any direction I want, okay? The bottom line is no matter what I'm doing, I'm moving a distance away from my starting point. So if I go this way 100 feet, I'm going to have to come back 100 feet to get to my boat. If I go this way 100 feet, I'm going to have to come back 100 feet. If I go this way 100 feet, I'm going to have to come back 100 feet. And this is what absolute value is. We see things in distance, which is what I'm talking about, and we can also see things in something I'll talk about in a second called magnitude. These are just fancy words for the simple ideas of how far, and how much, or how many. When we think of it this way, it becomes a lot simpler to realize that absolute value is always positive. And on a number line, if we were to graph this out, something to the left of 0 might be negative, something to the right of 0 might be positive, something below 0 might be negative, and something above 0 might be positive. But in absolute value, all that matters is the distance, or how far you are from your starting point, from 0. So absolute value is always stated as a positive number, because it is only a matter of how far you are from your starting point. So if I went this way 100 feet, my absolute value would be 100 feet from 0. If I went this way 100 feet, my absolute value would be 100 feet from 0. If I went this way 100 feet, my absolute value would be 100 feet from 0. So mathematically speaking, Absolute value uses these two straight line symbols. They're different from parentheses because they're not curved like parentheses, they're straight. And if you see these around a number, it wants to know just how far is the number inside from its starting point. And numbers usually all come from 0. So 6 would be 6 units from 0, therefore the absolute value would be 6. And -6, you might think about a number line and realize that, yeah, I see this negative symbol, but the bottom line is, if I'm talking absolute value, I just want to know how far that is from 0. So I would say that it's 6 units away from 0, and therefore the absolute value of -6 is also 6. So we learn an interesting thing here. Opposites have the same absolute value. So far we've talked about absolute value with distance from 0, but magnitude is also a distance from 0, but we ask how much or how many. So if I have a bank account, and unfortunately my bank account is -$45, or it was $150, doesn't really matter. My interest in magnitude is how far is that from its starting point. So we're going to assume that the bank account, because we're dealing with numbers, started at 0. And again, if I owe $45, then my debt is $45. So the absolute value of -45 in this case is 45. That's how much money I would need to get back to the starting point. So hopefully that clears up some issues on absolute value and how magnitude and distance are measured, and therefore always positive, because we're always looking to see how far we are from our starting point. But remember, math is a language. It's fun. Make sense of it. Think about going out on a boat or hiking the Grand Canyon. Think about bank accounts and maybe collections. Bottom line is, whenever you move away from your starting point, you're going to have to get back to that starting point when talking of absolute value. So when you respond with it, it's always going to be a positive number, and we use those two straight lines like so in order to ask absolute value in mathematical terms. Have a great day.